Hello, I'm Brenda Naseby, and I live in Glebe in Washington. I'm 83-year-old, and at this moment in time, I am on the board at Gen 2, and within Gen 2, I am on the People's Committee, which is actually about appointments and remunerations. And we have a newly formed Customer Committee, where we have 5 customers of Gen 2, and their opinions on Gen 2 are fed directly into the board. I'm also a member of our local community and customer group, and we meet 4 times a year, unless there's something specific that we need to discuss, and we can call a meeting. So I'm quite busy. My daughter lives down in Colombia, which is lovely because she's a girl who's lived abroad a great deal of her life, and it's lovely for me to have her son here.
Where were you in 1964?
64. I started Timex in 70. Can you do the maths for me? Because I'm trying to think as well. I was born in 41, and when I was 24, that would be
1965, I think. Yeah, 1965.
65.
Yeah.
I was on the buses for 5 years.
So, driver, conductor?
Conductress. Yes.
That's an interesting story in itself, because anybody, I would say, certainly under 40, is unlikely to know that conductors actually were on.
It was the only job that you got equal pay with a man. Yeah. 5 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which bus routes did you do?
Oh, I was based at Sunderland.
Mm-hmm.
So we would go to Newcastle, come back to Sunderland, and then go all the way through to Hartlepool. I think that was one of our longest trips. But at Sunderland, we covered Jarrow and Hebburn, all the local Washington, way out to, Dalton. Well, that will be on the route of the 40. And I mean, they were open-ended buses. Well, they were the only buses that would get through bad weather. Mm-hmm. Because they were big, heavy.
Yeah. So open-ended, is that like open at the back?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and a staircase. So there'd be a pole in the middle. Mm-hmm. And you would get on this side and go in, or that side and go upstairs.
And so is the top deck open?
Oh, no.
I'm visualising the old London buses. Was it like that, where you hop on and hop off? Oh, they were scary.
Yes.
Yeah. That's amazing. So
I mean, the drivers quite liked them.
Yeah.
But in them days, God, I've seen, to turn the wheel on some of them, they literally stand. Because there was no assisted steering or anything like that then. I mean, when I see them driving now, it's steering, they're not driving.
Yeah. So where were you living at the time, Brenda?
Shiny Row.
And when did you move to Washington?
71.
And so what brought you over here then?
Well, Newtown was being developed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working at Timex. And of course we were living with my mum. And then we got a house from Washington Development in Sulgrave. And that was when I used to walk to Timex, past us with colliery, where the miners would be on their hunkers, sitting having and they'd always say, "Oh, yeah, I'll read Bonnie La." You know how things were then. And when I worked at Timex, we would go to the pit canteen for our lunch, or even just go up and get a lovely scone or something. And I bought all my towels in the pit canteen. because they sold towels and soap, really good prices. And at Timex, they were making gyroscopes for the Apollo space mission. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yes, they did. It was high security block, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your job at Timex?
Right. I was on final inspection.
Mm-hmm.
So final inspection is where all the watch parts have been made.
Mm-hmm.
They've gone through various inspections under a microscope. You know, they're checking for flaws or whatever. And then I would work off a draftsman's plan, and I would have tolerances. Plus, but I worked in 1,000 microns. You know, so you're looking at, and we used shadowgraphs a lot to measure. You know, you'd put this little tiny thing up and it would project its image. But we had amazing equipment. So I would work to a tolerance, and everything I found that was like in the top spec or just over, in my sample, I would put into little envelopes. Now, when I'd completed all the checks, I would go to my supervisor, and he would have tolerances beyond mine. So he would sign my packets that he'd accepted those tolerances. And then they would go to like Dundee, which are automated machines.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember one day I was really I let myself be put under pressure, and I shouldn't have done. An expediter had a plane waiting at Usworth Airport to fly these parts up to Dundee. And it will be long, Brendan. I've got this. Anyway, there was something wrong in the parts. I was allowed 3 mistakes and you were sacked. But that, you knew that. You were told that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was one of the mistakes.
Yes. Yeah. Never ever happened again, but never mind.
And so most of what you were assessing, was it watches and clocks?
Yeah, like you know, your winder. This, I used to have to measure. You know, the pin that goes into the watch to drive it. I had to measure the concentricity on that. Wow. Oh, very in depth.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So did any of those parts land up in the space program? Do you know?
Not mine. No, mine was all watch parts. Yeah.
They're still watch parts.
But you know, the spinny gyroscope, they were what were, you know, like a top.
Yeah.
They were that was what was balancing. Yeah. But it was an American company, you see.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
So how long were you at Timex for?
You know, you tend to forget. I think I was there for 4 years. But what happened in that 4 year was, they made the watch parts, they made Washington redundant. You know, I got my redundancy. And then not long after, I went back, but working, they were developing energy cells. So I worked in the lab, and we would put, you know, they made a batch and it's very small batches in the beginning. So they'd make a batch of energy cells, and I would take a sample and I'll put these on test. So we had to determine what the end life of the cell was. But I would have to go in Christmas Day or whatever. Wow. They had to be read. Well, you couldn't lose the end point, you know, because then all had to be calculated. Molly and I had to, between us, we would go in. Yeah.
So you're like a team of two?
Yes.
So that was 1975, 76 then?
Yes, yeah.
Was that really the move to digital, kind of technology as opposed to
Yeah,
analog.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
coming in.
Mm.
And I think that this was when Timex decided, well, they were making battery operated watches, that they would go into the, you know, like the old fashioned watches were,
Mm.
you know, but I don't think you can buy a windy up watch now. It just changed. And I mean, Timex made some fabulous watches, you know. They even had automatic ones, so whenever you moved your wrist, it was winding the,
Ah,
yeah.
yes.
Uh,
Like self-winding thing.
mhm.
I'm trying to picture, whereabouts was the Timex factory?
Right. Okay. So can you imagine where Uswood Pit was?
Yeah.
Uswood Pit, and you would walk down the bank,
Mhm.
and the road would turn to your right.
Mhm.
The minute it starts turning to your right, Block 4 was here, where the gyroscopes were. And then there was another 3 blocks.
Right.
So you had the main bezels, and then you had the machine shop where the craftsmen made all the watch parts. And then you had another block where it was mostly offices, and where people working in there would be in some form of checking all the stuff from the machine shop and sorting out all the rubbish and what was faulty or whatever. This is another thing. When I worked in final inspection, if some of the parts were over, I mean, if you think of it, there's some tiny little parts in water, and I can't remember technically all. You know, we had chamfers and all kinds to measure, whatever. But I had to go into this chemical area, and there were acid baths. So I had to wear great big wellies, a rubber apron, rubber gloves up to here, and a visor, and measure these parts and give them to this guy, and he would actually dip them in the acid to shrink them. And then I'd have to measure them all again and say, another dip, or no, they'll be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you feel nervous going into the acid bath, or did you feel?
No, I was well protected. Yeah. And I wasn't actually touching anything. The guy was, yeah.
Yeah.
And we called them F Troop. But I don't think we were under pressure like what industry is today.
Yeah.
And it was the same when I went to Philips. When I retired, I missed the girls. You know, no, it was really good. I don't know, I think we looked out for each other in them days, you know.
Yeah. So how many of you were in your sort of section there?
In final inspection?
Yeah.
We had 2 guys and 3 girls. There was 5 of us, and a supervisor. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you have, sort of works outings and parties?
Oh, yeah. If there was any celebrations, we'd even go out with our partners and everything for a particular night out. So, yeah, no, it was good. I think there was more of a social life at Philips than there was at Timex. But then again, no, I'll change my mind on that, because they did have a committee that organised things at Timex. Yeah, I can remember going when the Top Club had just been opened. And that was when I worked at Timex. You know, I mean, it was a brand new club built, and it was quite a nice place to go to. It would either be a Christmas party, something like that. Or a few of us would go on a Thursday night and it was dancing, but ballroom dancing, not your disco stuff.
Oh, brilliant. And so did you go there with your husband, or?
He would be in the bar
Uh-huh.
and I would be with the girls. Yeah.
So you're all partnered up, so
Yes,
as girls, yeah.
I mean, some of the younger ones, they would probably tootle off to a nightclub or, if it was a birthday celebration or whatever, they would probably go into Newcastle after leaving the club. But yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, 1-0 Dorset was,
Oh yeah.
But you see, my dancing days was at the Rink at Sunderland and the Oxford Galleries.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Proper dancing.
Proper dancing.
Yes. Yeah.
And was that in mostly the 60s then? Or?
Yeah. But I think the kids miss out a lot. And I would hate it if I missed one dance. I just wanted to be on the floor dancing. Yeah. And over the years, people, get to know you. And on a Sunday night, there was always a Chinese guy would come and get me for a tango. But solely because we danced well together and we enjoyed, nothing other than, we enjoyed the dance and we danced well together. But, and them girls didn't drink. It was the boys that went for a pint and, we would have a coffee, but certainly no alcohol. Yeah, and then things started to change. They would do a little spot where it was more modern. The dance crazes that came out, all the what were they called again? Funky Chicken and all of them city where the girls would put their handbags in the middle and we would dance around them, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. So they would do bits of that and then the band would come on. It would be proper dancing, as I called it. And then gradually
it took over.
Yeah, it took over.
It's a shame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But in those days, when a girl went out with a boy, your parents knew they would look after you. And I'm not so sure if that's the case today, and I think that's really sad. Yeah.
It's a shame.
I would have liked my grandchildren to have felt that you would be looked after, that, yeah. They would make sure that you got home and that you were safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, I would assume also in those days you'd be mostly on buses.
Yes.
Or walk to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The good old 49 from Horton or Houghton through to Newcastle. Yeah.
And so that would be a long way back for any lad who's from Newcastle, if you've seen,
Yeah.
So you continued at Timex and then you went on to Philips, is that right?
No, for some reason, I'm trying to think. There was some form of industrial action going on at Timex. And Margie, the girl that I worked with, her husband was a convener at, might have been Berkeley or Wharf or whatever. Anyway, there was all of this going on, and Margie and I were going into work and he was saying, you're wrong, you shouldn't be. Anyway, and all the carry on, I just left, when it was, and then for a time, I worked at a little place on Crowther called Little Fuse.
Yeah.
And there were these tiny little things that we made. I can't give you any information on them. And then I did a little spell at Berghaus. Oh, well, I can't remember what estate you call Berghaus or so. And next door used to be the cake factory that made all the lovely gâteaux. And I worked there for a little spell, obviously on quality control. And they did flexi hours in them days. So some of them would be finished by a Thursday, you know. And that must have been when I'd been trying to get into Philips for quite a while. And that was when I got my job at Philips.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. And can you remember roughly what year that would be?
I started Philips in 77.
And so what was it like at Philips?
You know, I'm still friends with some of the girls I work with. And we used to think we were so badly done to. And I think, honestly, we definitely weren't. And we made the big deflection units, you know, when TVs had a really big back on them. Yeah. We made deflection units. And
now, excuse my ignorance, because I'm trying to picture what on earth a deflection unit is.
Oh, right. They're about this big, and all coils that's been, it's quite technical, coils that have been wound. And these go on the back of a gun. And this is what gives you your colours, your primary colours, red, blue, green, which will give you your picture along with everything else that's in there. Yeah.
That's amazing. So you actually...
So it's a gun that deflects onto your screen.
So you were working on those, and I get the impression Philips was a sizable factory.
Yeah, wasn't it? Yes, it was. I was trying to think, I couldn't remember whether I worked 8 till 4. Seems to ring a bell in the very beginning. And then there was a twilight shift that I think did 5 till 8. I don't think when I first started that I did 7 till 3. Twilight came in 3 till 7. I think that was something that happened because I was there 24 years. So that was something that happened later. So I did day shift. And then somewhere along the line, they brought the second twilight shift in. And I think that was when we moved 7 till 3. Twilight did 3 till 7 and then 7 till 11. And then eventually they put us on 3 shifts.
So there wasn't a night shift or anything? It's
not in the beginning.
Yeah.
No. And then we did go to 3 shifts. And it was a case of, it's 3 shifts. If you can't do 3 shifts, then you haven't got a job. There was nothing else. And out of the whole factory, there was only one girl who, her husband wouldn't allow her to do it. I'm saying allow, I don't mean allow.
Yeah.
He wasn't happy that she did night. He didn't think it was, you know. Well, as I say, by this time I lived on the outer road in Sulgrave, and I just walked to work. Yeah. But isn't it funny that I could walk to work and it didn't bother me, but I wouldn't want to do it now?
What's changed?
People. Yeah. People, I think. I don't want to get political, and I always try hard not to. But obviously I was born in the war. I'm saying we had nothing. We all had nothing. But I think I had the most happiest childhood. I had the freedom, bottle of water and a sugar and bread sandwich. We could be away for the day. Up Cancher Hill, Lord Lambton, and our parents never. That's what I wish for these young children. But and I sometimes think we've gained a lot, but at a price. I think, like, and I've heard Twilight girls say, you know, you start off twilight, you start liking the money, and then you put more hours in. And I think with women as well, that we carry the guilt of we're a working mother, and I think we tend to throw money at our kids because we can't give them the time that we feel guilty we should be giving them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if you were to ask kids, they would probably like you to be at home and forgive the stuff that, you know, the trainers, the gear, and I just want children to feel comfortable in their own skin, that they don't have to have.
Yeah.
I really, and I think parenting's so difficult. It's not an easy job. It isn't. And I think we should encourage them, give them the confidence, and to be who they are, and not to fit a mold. I think it must be difficult for some parents when the kids are wanting these things, and you've got a limited budget. And I don't want them to feel as if they've got to follow a mould or whatever. I don't want to be caught in that commercial trap.
Obviously, you raised your daughter here, so did she go to one of the local schools?
Yes, she went to Usworth Comp. And then Alison went to Berghouse, and she was like assistant credit controller. From Berghouse, she went to Nike, and Mike McCabe, an American, was the CEO at the time after Brendan Foster left.
Aye.
And Alison went there as the credit controller. And then she lived abroad for 18 years. She went from Washington to Nike, Germany, as Mike's PA. And then from there, she went to Portland, Oregon, the campus. And then from there, she went to Charlotte, North Carolina. And then from there, she went to Amsterdam. She was there 4 years, and that was when my first granddaughter was born. So we both had really interesting careers.
So I'm guessing you were straight over to Amsterdam when you got a chance. Yeah.
Well, it was lovely when I did shifts at Timex, because we finished on a we would finish and we would have a long weekend, so we weren't back in till Monday afternoon, and I used to go over for the weekend. And of course, she was only she was born in the millennium, and I retired in the February 21. Yeah. So the kids can always remember, when will I see you? Tomorrow, Nan, tomorrow. But it's a bit like, you know, when you're working, you come home, you maybe have to go to the shops, you come home, you cook a meal, and you haven't got the energy that you would like to give to prices too. I always try to find the balance. Very difficult, but if you can just find the balance where you can have the extra time and a little bit extra money, but not where it's the main,
main driver.
Yeah.
Can I take you back to when you first moved in to Washington? What was the landscape like? You know, when you come to Soulgrave, I mean, was it like living on a building site?
I can remember when I was on the buses, and you know, the 25, you know, that would go through Springwell to Newcastle, and we'd come down Edith Avenue, and you could look into where they were building the flats. So there was an awful lot of building going on in Washington, and those flats were beautiful. They really were. In my early days at Timex, at Philips, some of my friends did live in the flats, and they were absolutely beautiful. A nice place to work. If I remember rightly, there was a little co-op in there, a post office. There was a laundrette. And I think I've walked over from Sulgrave into the flats to go to the post office or whatever. But I was never ever frightened to walk over there like what it later developed into.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds to me like at the time it must have felt like a very well planned place to be living.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Do you think, that was a question that I'm asking everybody, do you think there were ever any mistakes in the planning?
In the original designs of them? No. I'm led to believe the idea behind it all was that each village you would be able to walk from one to another.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was the scheme of things. And each village had its own identity, the way the houses were built. Mm. Apart from the district numbers, of course, which were, unless you lived in Washington, it was and even today, I don't drive, but all these roundabouts look the same to me. Okay. Sometimes I'm never sure where I'm at, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Is this the right one to come off or not, you know?
Yeah.
So, I think it was a good thing for Washington. Mm-hmm. Some of the things that I get not upset about, but I sometimes don't like it. Nissan was always associated with Washington. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it was Nissan Sunderland. But I have seen the plan Sunderland Council have got for the future of Sunderland, where they're going to build. And there's a plot of land near where Elmfield is. Mm-hmm. And it's over the line from Sulgrave. And I know that the government has designated that to be a garden city. Because the idea behind it all is that you build houses where the work is. Mm-hmm. So happens, and I know people are getting upset, and I can get upset, because I sometimes feel that we don't belong to Sunderland. But I do like the planning. And I think Sunderland's going to be a vibrant place to live. Mm-hmm. In a few years' time. I think there's some amazing people in Sunderland who's got the vision. Mm-hmm. And when you see the whole plans, when you see the new bridge going over and the development of the riverside and everything, we can never always get it all right. We can only get it right some of the time. Exactly. But I do like what I've seen, really.
You know, George Clark's doing this design challenge thing right. At the moment with kids, and they're meant to be designing new courtyard villages. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, do you think that there's something that they need to design in?
There's a lot more thought going into developing new estates and everything. That they consider people's well-being, and it's not just a house that you're going to live in. That they're trying to make it a nice environment to live in. I think if we were to go and design Washington Newtown now, it would be so different.
What do you think would be the main difference?
I suppose for building costs, you know, we tend to build in blocks. Mm-hmm. Maybe more semis or with space around them. I'm saying all of this, but I know what the price of building these houses are. Exactly. And sometimes it's social housing. Mm. And sometimes what you would like to do, and the reality of it is you do the best you can with what you've got.
Right. So I'm going to take you back now to your first place at Sulgrave. Was that in a block, or was it a separate?
No, it was a block. Mm-hmm. And Sulgrave was a lovely place to live in. Mm-hmm. My next door neighbour, they got Neighbours of the Year at an award mm-hmm. through the Sunderland Echo or whatever. No, in the beginning it was lovely, and then we would have one or two problem families here and there, which, you know, they say if you put a problem family in a decent street that you bring them up. Doesn't happen. The street will go down, people start moving in because they have too much. I think people just want to have a quiet life and feel safe. When I lived in Sulgrave, obviously the top club was 6 minutes walk or whatever. But with my neighbours, we you know, and then the kids, we had a grassed area outside of ours, and we get stuff organised for the kids and everything. But I remember on a night we put everything right. You know, we came out and swept up and picked whatever. We were part of the kids playing out, and Dawn and Terry organised all things for them. And got a lot of help from Sunderland Council as well. So we were definitely, I'm not saying it happened on all of the estate, but it certainly happened the 2 streets that we lived in.
Can I just ask very, very quickly if there's anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
No, but if I go on to talk about Phillips, I can talk about when we bought the first FMS1 line in, which was an automated line where you would have assemblers making the units, and it would go around to be checked by robots. And I can remember in the very beginning, the biggest problem was getting the robots to talk to each other so that they recognised what they'd done on one and added statistical process control then. And this was when we would have the development team, and I did a little bit work on with the development team on flat screen TVs. And I was senior shop steward. So from my early days in 24 years, a huge technological change, and a great crowd of girls to work with. I can weld. I'm oxyacetylene electric arc welder.
Wow. And is that from working at Phillips?
No, early 60s, I think, at Washington Engineering.
Trailblazer.
Yeah.
And so were you the only woman there?
Oh, yes. It was all, there was one guy there who, because we did huge transformers.
Right.
You know, we were up on the gantry doing the welding.
So were you good at science at school?
I left school with no qualifications at all, not one. I came to Gen 2 when my husband became extremely abusive. And I was 74, and we'd been married 44 years. But he'd always put me down, you know. And we'd had problems, whatever. And I just had it, I'm not doing this with you. I don't deserve it. And this is not how I'm going to end my few years, whatever I've got left. And it was Gen 2's abuse team who helped me, who I'll give you 2 little stories and insight into them. He knew I'd got a house and he could hear me on the phone getting the electric in. He said, "I want you out of here now." I said, "I've got nowhere to go." I said, "I haven't got a bed, I've got nothing." He says, "Well, I don't care about that." Anyway, I phoned Joanne up and she came with a colleague. And all I had, my personal belongings, was about 4 or 5 boxes. And they came and got them. And he was saying horrible things to me, and Joanne kept saying, "Are you all right, Brenda?" Because I know they can get the police instantly. I said, "Yeah." So anyway, they came, and this house is empty. You know, you can imagine the tile floors and putting their boxes down. And Alison was coming up from Kent on the Tuesday. On the Tuesday, I had a bed and a wardrobe delivered that we had somewhere to sleep. And Alison and I had 2 canvas chairs. And that was when I started getting involved with Gentoo. I'm paying them back for what they did for me.
That's really wonderful. Are you happy to share that story? Because to be honest with you, I think that is something that other women need to hear.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah. Even at that age, you can make a life.